Hey, folks. Sorry about that. I guess there was something with copyright, and we got sort of flagged, which is kind of funny because it's our film. But you never know; these things can happen. We just gotta like improvise. But I hope you were able to enjoy what you saw. I think it was about the first half of the film. So you saw most of it. Just to err on the side of caution, I think we're going to shift to the Q&A and discussion, and just talk maybe about what we saw. And what we can also say is the film starting today is actually available for free. So you can actually watch the film on your own for free on Vimeo on demand. We'll put the link in the chat, and with a promo code, which is Stay Home, and you'll be able to watch the film for free. So you can maybe after the stream go and watch the second half, or if you missed maybe the beginning, you can go and do a screening party tonight with your family or friends. We really do apologize about that. It's funny when you own your own film. Sometimes YouTube decides elsewise. So, but nevertheless, for us, I think even the first half of the film is it's probably like the hardest to watch, and can be very difficult. It sort of sets up two stages of the Rohingya story. The first being life before the violence, and life that the Rohingyas had, the food, the culture, the music, the clothing, the family. And then when we move to Act Two, everything is kind of taken away from them, and you start to see the violence, the physical violence, but also the mental violence. And I was writing in the chat as we were watching the film, the scene with the parents and the community members sharing their stories and experiences of the genocide was probably some of the hardest stuff for us to film. I remember those interviews would be sometimes 3 hours long with one of the kids' parents, and it was very just difficult because for some of them, this is the first time they had talked about these stories and told these stories to anyone else. So it's very hard to watch it back, even for us, because it kind of brings back those memories. But I think it's important, and like one of the kids says in the beginning of the film, it's important to not look away. This is a time where we're at home and we're sort of confronted with the news, and we don't have as much to distract us from what's happening. And I think sometimes that can be a good thing. I think it's a responsibility for us to, when we become witnesses to genocide, and for those who were watching the film and who watched the first half, you were a witness to genocide, to real testimonies of genocide. And I think that comes with a responsibility to act, whether it's to tell people what you saw, go on your own. If you've never really heard about the Rohingya crisis, just go and type in Google and type Rohingya and just see what's happening on the news, what's happening to them. Donate. You have great organizations like the UNHCR that are on the ground and have been doing incredible work for so long, that need your support, especially at a time like now. It comes with a responsibility, and I think that never really goes away, even for us. And it's been over 3 years now since we made this film, and we still feel that responsibility everywhere we go. So I really appreciate everyone who's tuning in and who's watching. We're going to go more to a Q&A. So Alex, you can feel free to take it away. And again, if anyone has questions in the chat, we'll be happy to answer anything or comment.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Thank you, Yusuf. Yeah, I'm just gonna welcome back the folks. As Yusuf mentioned, apologies for that, but as Yusuf mentioned, look, for me personally, this is the third time I've watched the film, and it is still quite harrowing, and it's still quite it's hard to watch those scenes, and but that's the point of this, is to bring forward and educate the public about what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Bangladesh and the Rohingyas, right? So, yeah. So I guess before we start asking Mr. Yusuf, Zine, and Kevin Young questions, perhaps because we didn't get to do this at the beginning, perhaps if Kevin and Yusuf, if you could. Introduce yourselves to the audience. I know, Yusuf. We kind of did it backwards because I feel like you've had conversations with the audience now and haven't formally introduced yourself. So perhaps if we could start with you with the formal
Sure,
introductions.
sure. Yeah. My name is Yusuf Zine. I am one of the directors, along with Kevin, of the film I Am Rohingya. I also directed the play that the film is based on. The play is a 4-act show about the journey of the Rohingya people, and all told by 14 incredible Rohingya youth who are refugees and who live here in Canada, in Kitchener-Waterloo. I had the distinct pleasure and honor of working with them for over 3 years to tell their story here and film. And yeah, that's me.
Great. And Kevin, how about you? Please tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm the co-director of this film. I was also the cinematographer, and yeah, back when we did the play, I also helped with a lot of the technical stuff. Very involved with the whole project from start to finish. But yeah, we made this. It was a 3-year-long process, so a good portion of the last little while, and I just enjoyed what you were able to see and what you'll hopefully be able to see when you click on that Vimeo link later and watch it again.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I think Yusuf, you started answering this question already, but um, perhaps if you could elaborate. I mean, how did the idea for display and the subsequent documentary came about?
Yeah, it started. I was doing a sort of an internship with a social service organization based in Kitchener-Waterloo, and they had a plan to do a project with the Rohingya youth. We didn't really know what it was going to be, but we knew that there was a very strong and vocal Rohingya youth community in Kitchener-Waterloo, and we wanted to do a project on it. And I was the original idea was to do like workshops for refugees. And for me, like I was just finishing up my undergrad. I didn't really have experience doing that. So I kind of just threw it to them and I said, well, what do you guys want to do? Like, we have this funding, we have the summer ahead of us. What's the best way for you to use this money and to do something you want to be a part of? And it was actually Ahmed, who some of you saw in the beginning of the film, who was, fighting for custody for his younger brother. He actually suggested doing a play where they would reenact their memories and experiences of fleeing the genocide. And for me, I thought that was a brilliant idea because my personal background is in theater. I've been doing theater my entire life. It's been something that I've always been passionate about, and also something that I have a skill set in, and something that I can actually be useful with. Because with doing workshops or refugee settlement, that's not my area of focus. So theater is something I knew about and I knew I could help with. So it was really from that point on we started on this project of doing a play that would reenact their stories. And it sort of took the format of something that's called ethnographic theater, which is taking real narratives and real oral stories and turning it into a theater production. So for me, I had to do a lot of research on what that looked like and the ethics about it. And, and we made a lot of mistakes. And I'm sure looking back, I think I could have done a lot of things differently. But it all just kind of came out of a place of, I think, for the kids, frustration, because since they'd come to Canada as refugees from the camps, they had spent months throughout the years protesting in city centers and city squares and on street corners about the plight of their people. And the day by day, the genocide kept happening, and they felt like nobody was listening. So when I met them, I could sense the frustration in their voices, that they wanted to do something. They wanted to change what was happening to their people. And this play was kind of the first time that somebody kind of asked them what they thought the solution was. And so from there, I kind of we started the process, and then Kevin and I, we'd been dabbling in filmmaking and looking for our first film to do. We didn't know if it was going to be a documentary or a scripted film or what. And then I was telling Kevin about the project, and then he said, well, why don't I just come to rehearsal and just film and see what we get. And from there, I think afterwards we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, yeah, this is our film. And
what an amazing story. I mean, you mentioned Kevin. Kevin, please tell us how the heck did you collaborate with Yusuf on this? What brought you? I mean, I guess for you, like, how did you collaborate with Yusuf to bring this vision that Yusuf is mentioning to the screen?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the moment he mentioned the project, I knew it was something special, like a special story. So, and something that had to be told. I think the hardest part for us starting out was knowing that we were going to have to tell almost 3 different storylines and somehow fit them all together. Obviously we had the story of the making of the play. We have the stories of the Rohingya, and then we also had the filmic version of the play. So that was something that, we really knew, not just being first-time filmmakers, but this is like our first film, and also trying to tackle fitting these storylines together was a hard task that we had started discussions day one, I think, just how that was going to be possible. But really, yeah, it was eye-opening experience, I think, being a first film, but also just the nature of this story. But I think we both knew it had to be made, and the stories had to get out there to be heard. And yeah, it was a great experience that I even learned a lot. Minus the film stuff, I learned a lot just about the Rohingya culture, the people, the kids, and I think it was something you could never pay for. It was an experience that was just amazing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned the kids, and as well, Yusuf mentioned in particular Ahmad, right? I guess Yusuf, maybe perhaps if you could elaborate further. I mean, what was it like to work with these young people that has so much to share, have so much experience, experiences there, both on stage and on screen. What was it like for you as filmmakers to capture their stories?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. I mean, we had 14 kids, a part of the cast, and you can imagine that having that many, artists in the same space collaborating on one story or multiple stories is definitely challenging. And I had amazing help. I mean, when Kevin wasn't, filming, he would also jump in and help produce the show. And I had a great co-director, Zine Ramahi, and great stage managers, Sydney and Ras. It was a great team that kind of supported this. But, the kids, I think it was great because they really had a lot of fun with it. And I know it's hard to say that because, we're reenacting stories of genocide. But I think what got us through it, because it was a 9-month process. I mean, it took 9 months to put the play together, which for anyone who's done theater, it's a very long time to be working on one show. So, for 9 months to be dealing with such heavy subject matter, I think we all had to be, kind of lighthearted. And, there were scenes, the very heavy scenes, that sometimes the kids were laughing through, and we were giggling through it. But I felt like that was necessary to be able to get through to get through the difficulty of it, and to persist, because people always ask us, like, were there a lot of people crying and breaking down, and there really isn't a lot of that in the film, because we wanted to be true to what the process was like. And I was goofing around, and I would lose my temper sometimes as director, but I really wanted to treat this as a play. I didn't want to infantilize them. I don't think any of us did. I think we treated them as artists, and we treated them as actors. And that comes with respect for them and for the work that they're doing. Yes, we're having fun, and yes, we're telling something very important, but I wanted them to be, to feel like for the first time, they're being seen as adults and being seen as real professional artists. And they are. And some of their performances, even from Jaber, who's, as you saw in the beginning of the film, one of the younger kids, he was 8 years old at the time. He's one of the best actors I've ever seen or worked with. I mean, better than a lot of trained actors I know, because he just gives it his all. And that's one thing you can't replicate with other actors, because these are their stories that they've been through. These are their real experiences. There's only so much I can do as a director. It's really just prepping the stage for them to kind of come alive and tap back into that.
Wow. I'm going to ask Kevin sort of the similar question, but I guess from behind the camera. What was the experience for you like behind the camera, capturing the youth in both their everyday lives, and I guess on the stage covering some of these very sensitive.
Yeah, it was definitely. We definitely had to find a balance in that, and I think it definitely. Yusuf may be able to comment about this later, but I think we were a point for us where at first, we did get the kids' stories down on paper. We were able to just kind of create a theater production out of it, a play out of it. But I think the real turning point for us was when the parents, and we filmed this. However, it didn't make it in the film, but we do have the footage. We may release it soon. We actually did a performance just for the parents about halfway through the rehearsal time we had, and that was just to make sure the stories were right. Because we did get these stories from the kids, so we wanted to fact check with the parents and make sure they weren't lying or telling any giving us any fake stories. But the moment that performance finished, we did a roundtable talk, and I think that's when the parents realized what was actually happening. I don't think the kids really just told the parents what we were doing, so they were able to see, and actually they all wanted to be a part of it right from that moment. They wanted to have a say on maybe fixing up the wardrobes would be a little more like what they would wear at home, or tweaking little parts of the stories to make it a little more accurate. It's almost like they all came alive and wanted to be like directors of the film. And then later, as rehearsals continued to happen, we started to get more feedback through the kids from the parents. So every time they'd come back to rehearsal the next week, they'd tell us, "Oh, my parents told me this a new story I've never heard before of, something about maybe a relative being killed or something happening in the camps." And we almost were able to write new scenes as it went. One of the scenes being Ruma's friend who passed away when she was very young by being killed in the streets by soldiers. That was added very late, and almost after the fact, when I think Ruma started to see that people were introducing new stories, and she said, "You know what? Maybe I can introduce this new story." And that scene alone, I think, gave so much power to the film, and just able to see the courage of a kid stepping forward and saying, "I want to tell this horrific story that happened to me in my life," because I think she saw, as well as the parents saw, that this is the way to get these stories out there. So that was really the turning point for us, I think, was that performance for the parents. But I think, just in general for me, being behind the camera, I think I got a different perspective than Yusuf got. It was almost got to kind of be a fly on the wall. While he was managing and having to kind of discipline the kids sometimes, I was able to sit back and really see the kids change from, and the parents said this at the end of the film, how they saw the kids change from before and after the play happened. I was really able to witness that and almost becoming actors. And Yusuf was able to also really push that and almost turn them into actors from his traditional background.
I mean, the film was filmed about 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what you mentioned earlier. I
Yeah.
guess, are you still in touch with these young refugees? I guess this is the question for both of you. Are you still in touch with them? And B, how are they doing today?
Yeah, we still talk. Whenever we can, we try to, before COVID. When we did in-person screenings, we try to get them out as much as we can. But the reality is, a lot of them now are too cool for us. I mean, they now have very busy lives. They have jobs, and some are in university and are on the verge of going to university. So we try to reach out, and I try to provide as much support as I can if they need a reference letter, or if they need just me to look over an application or something like that. We've had some amazing events where the kids have come along. We did a tour last year in the UK where we did screenings in Scotland and England, and we were able to bring Ahmed and Ruma with us, and we did a little live performance and did Q&As with them. So they're really doing well. And just as an update for Ahmed, I know he's progressed a lot in the custody of his little brother, and things are looking good on that end. So this was an experience that tied us, I think, forever. I think this is something that certainly defined that time in my life and in Kevin's life, and I think for the kids too. I mean, it's opened up so many doors for all of us, and it's been such a beautiful experience. So even as life goes on, and as Kevin and I start to work on other projects, and the kids grow, I think we'll always be in each other's lives, because this is something that tied us as family. And one of the things that the kids and the family said to us when we were making the film is that they saw us as honorary Rohingyas, which is a really huge honor, but also a huge responsibility, and that's something you carry with you. So so I always, when I get a chance to talk to them, I always love it. And just as a side plug, next week we are doing a panel discussion with another organization called Never Again Coalition, and Ruma from the film, one of the older cast members, will actually be there as well. So if you want to tune into that, you get a chance to ask her questions. And I always love to connect people. Like, people always email us asking, they have cool projects going on, and they want to contact the youth for a certain reason. And so whenever they feel comfortable, I always like to connect them, because they have a lot to say, these kids. And I think, and they're not even kids anymore, they're adults. But I think when they get the opportunity to be a part of something important like this film, it really goes to amazing places.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's great to hear an update with Ahmed. It's great to hear that things are going well for him and his brother there. So yeah, no, Kevin, how about you? I mean, it must have been amazing for these kids at that time with you behind the scenes or behind the cameras. I mean, how about you? Have you been in touch with some of these folks?
Yeah, I mean, we have all of them on Facebook and Instagram, and we're always sending each other things. And but it was great to get to know them. Also knowing that, like, some of them were going to university and colleges and stuff, and letting them know that we were always there for any help. We also, that was the thing Yusuf and I kind of had to balance, is being filmmakers, you're not supposed to get too close to your subject or the community you're working with. Sometimes you're supposed to have these boundaries, but we found it, like, every time we would film, and the parents or the kids would go, you have to come to our house, we have dinner, we have snacks, we want to talk to you. and we would end up in their house for a couple more hours, and that was before we had to drive back from Waterloo to Toronto to our homes every night. So yeah, it was getting to keep in touch with them is always great, and seeing actually where some of them are now, some of the great work they're doing, and great places they're going. I just can't wait to see some of the younger ones where they're going to go and where they're going to be in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds. I mean, Yusuf mentioned earlier some of them are too cool now that they're grown up. But it sounds like you know what they're doing very well, which is fantastic. I'm gonna go to the audience. Actually, there's a question from, and forgive me for if I mispronounce his name, from Jose Piranian, and this is a question for Yusuf. Actually, I'm gonna read the question out verbatim. So forgive me if I missed anything, but. The question is, what is it about performance that allows humans to deal with and heal from unprocessed and at times intergenerational trauma?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, there's two things there that I think that are healing when it comes to performance. One is the process. Of rehearsing and preparing for a performance, and the second is the actual performance. Because with theater, you're spending months preparing for the role and running through things for an hour performance for a couple nights. So I actually, in my experience, have found that the magic or the essence of what we do sometimes comes out in rehearsal, or comes out in the process of actually building the story and telling it. So because you're working with other actors, you're working with artists, and how often as humans in our everyday life, other than work, depending on what we do you get a chance to interact with other artists in such an intimate way, and not only with your other actors, with the other players, but also with the audience. I think there's something about that where it's such an intimate mode of art, more so than anything really, that allows you to be vulnerable and allows you to connect with other human beings. And when you're telling a story like this, about something about trauma and hardships and genocide, to be able to connect to your fellow actors or to the audience is incredibly, to use the word loosely, therapeutic, because you're walking through memories. And it's one thing to sit down and talk about memories that you've been through, but when you take things an extra step and actually start reenacting it and reliving it, like Kevin was talking about, that story with Ruma, it was for the first time, she'd been telling us the story towards the end of the process, but when she actually did it and reenacted it, I couldn't really give her any notes because she was just doing it the way she remembered. She was just walking through the motions. And as an audience member, you're enthralled by it, because it's real. It's so intimate and so vulnerable that as human beings, we don't usually get to be like that. And we don't usually get to watch people like that. So it's such a strong connection. And that's why for the theater space, we really wanted to make sure that the audience and the actors were on the same level playing field, that there wasn't a higher up stage and that the audience was down below, that we wanted the actors to be able to connect to the audience members and go right up to their face and walk past them and give them looks. Like, we wanted that interaction, because it's also like we're here in the same room together. You can't really ignore us now. We're sharing a room together for the next hour, so let's talk. And I do think theater is a dialogue. I do think, even if you look back at Shakespeare and when they performed Shakespeare plays at that time in the Globe Theater, the actors would talk to the audience And like when Romeo is considering talking to, like, going to Juliet and talking to her, he asks the audience, what should I do? And the audience, yells out, oh, don't do it, or go do it. Like, the essence of theater is meant to be a dialogue. Even if the audience is silent, you being there, you're participating in the story. You've now become a part of the world. And I think the best theater allows you to feel like you are a part of this world. And I think that's what excited me about doing this project, and telling the Rohingya story through theater, is because now, for so many years, the Rohingya genocide has been ignored and swept under the rug. But if we can get a couple hundred people into a room, or get people watching the film, then it's sort of like, now you're part of our world. And so, and for the actors themselves, it allows them to feel like they literally have a stage, and they have the platform, and they have a spotlight, where these are things that they haven't had, or been able to work through. I truly feel like, even in the mode of performance, while you're performing, you can realize things, and have incredible breakthroughs. I've seen people break down on stage when they start performing. I mean, Ahmed, speaking of that, has on multiple times broken down while performing. I feel him, and I understand that, because it's one thing to rehearse and do it, in rehearsal in a black room. But when you're actually there on stage, and there's people there for you, the audience is there to hear you and to support you, and the lights are on, it can be overwhelming. Not just the nervousness of performing, but the just the love that's there. And that, for them, having not had the platform for so long, now they finally have it. And what's great is that it's been such an overwhelming positive reception, where 3 years later, we're still talking about the film and showing the film, and having people ask us, are we doing performances anymore? Because it works. I mean, they successfully were able to work through their trauma and share it with people. And that's such an incredible thing that most of us can't do, is to work through our own trauma, but then be able to say, here, now it's yours. And that's why that's the last line of the film and the play is, this is our story, now it's yours, to give a piece of this performance to the audience. And it's such a beautiful thing that I think only performance theater can replicate.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. No, it's amazing. It's amazing that you could integrate these. It's I mean, the stories of I've known both of you, and I've spoken to both of you multiple times over the years, and it's still amazing when you talk about the experiences with these. They're not really actors, right? Although they're rehearsing, they're actually just replaying their life, which is so surreal and I guess unreal, especially for folks like us who's just watching it, right? So I just want to remind the audience, please continue to ask the questions. Again, I know these two, they love questions, and the harder it is, the better. Please ask them the questions. But before we go there, another thing, I guess, how has this, or how has your involvement in this film shaped you? I mean, I think I'd asked you this question before, and it's interesting, a year after we did the actual play that or not the play, but we've screened this in the theater with UNHCR, and now we're screening it again. And I haven't asked you this in about a year. Just interesting to hear if it's changed. I guess the question is, how has your involvement in this film shaped you? What do you hope viewers of I Am Rohingya take away from this film?
Kevin,
maybe I'll go. Kevin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll start. I think, obviously as a filmmaker, it was not an easy task to just jump into a feature-length film. So, filmmaking it changed everything we do, for our company as filmmakers. But I think, as a whole, it opened my eyes up to a lot of the things happening around the world that I did not know was happening. Um, I think it just made me more open to learning about and wanting to learn about more things that are going on in the world and wanting to help. And I think it's also changed sort of some future projects or potential future projects that we've wanted to work on. You know, we've decided really to make it our motto to go out and make films that are going to help give people voices and help people. So we've really tried to find stories like that to tell in the last few years, well, since we've released and finished this film. Like now we're working on pitching a podcast. The podcast is about a man who had schizophrenia that was actually killed in a jail cell, even though he wasn't supposed to even be in that jail cell. And just kind of help. Now we're trying to create a podcast that is going to try to answer the questions of, why did this happen, and should anyone with schizophrenia be even in a jail to begin with? So we're really trying to find those stories that are giving people voices and creating change. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that came out of this was our approach to finding stories that we wanted to tell and create and distribute.
And yourself, Yusuf, how has this shaped you in any way?
Well, I think this film, like Kevin said, it was our first film, and we learned a lot about filmmaking, and the crisis itself. I think I've become more acquainted with the Rohingya, the plight of the Rohingya people, more so than any human rights situation in the world right now. So I'm grateful for that. And, you don't always get the opportunity to become so acquainted to a social issue like this. Like I had the pleasure of talking with this community and interviewing them and spending time with them and hearing their real testimonies of genocide. And that's such a rare, pleasure that one of the things I learned comes with trust. I mean, we didn't just waltz in out of nowhere and just ask them to pour their heart out on stage. I mean, this was months of gaining trust. And I think for going forward with other projects now and other films, that's definitely the biggest thing to take away is that, I think the reason why we were able to make this film and get the interviews that we got and the answers that we got is because of that trust, and that takes time to develop. And especially when you're dealing with sensitive subject matter, which, like Kevin mentioned, some of our other projects are, you need to be able to take your time and be sensitive to the stories that you're hearing and put the stories first. I mean, it can be easy as a filmmaker to say, like, this is the film I want to make, this is our agenda, and kind of just go with that. But I think you have to prioritize the people and the stories and respect what you're getting and be true to it, and try not to sensationalize it or, try to make it flashy. I think just to be honest about what you're getting, because sometimes that makes the most exciting and interesting film. For me, it's changed me a lot. I mean, I think I've become more, I guess, just attentive to difficult stories, and it sort of, my ears pop up a little bit more, and being able to tell a story like this about genocide allows us to tell even more difficult stories. I think we kind of like cracked the seal on that. And I was just talking to somebody the other day and telling them about our other projects, and they were like, yeah, it doesn't sound like you do anything like happy or lighthearted. Everything you do is depressing. And I think, like Kevin said, those are the stories that need to be told. And I think that's what interests us, is being able to tell the stories that you want to be able to look away from, but telling it in a way that you're able to confront it and deal with it.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing your latest projects. Anything that is on the works now that's going to come up soon?
Well, like Kevin mentioned, we're developing an investigative podcast about the case of Suleiman Fakiri. It's kind of nice now we're in lockdown, and we kind of started a setup where we could record a podcast from home. So that's kind of nice because, as everyone knows, the whole industry is kind of shut down. And in terms of films, we did have another project kind of in the works. We're developing a book into a documentary, or potentially a documentary series on another case, but a criminal case. But because we can't really start any production on that, we're kind of just in the pre-production phases and research and stuff like that, which is nice to do from home. But I guess the podcast is probably the closest thing, and that'll probably be out in a couple months. So if you want to follow our social media, our Interspeak page, or our personal Twitters or Instagrams, we'll be posting updates about that. We're always pushing the film as much as we can. I think we just really can't let go of it because it means so much to us, and sadly it's so timely. So I'm actually looking forward to the time where the film is not relevant, because it means that the situation for the Rohingyas has ended, and I'll be happy to put it on a shelf. But we're storytellers at heart and filmmakers, and there are a lot of other stories that call to us, and we're excited to tell.
Hey, Yusuf, this is going back to that original question from Jose, but I didn't know if you want to plug the kit we have on our website that people that may want to be able to run some of the theater workshops and stuff that you did with the kids in, let's say, a classroom or at home with their kids, looking for things to do. If you want to maybe talk about that.
Yeah, totally. So if you go to our website, and we'll put the link in the chat right now to our website, you can download a teacher's guide that we developed, where you can actually replicate the methods that we used in this film with the play on your own group or group of students. It's something we developed because we got a lot of people asking us how we did it and the impacts of it. And I felt like beyond the film, it was important for us to document this process in a way that educators can utilize. And you don't have to be a teacher. You can be you can work for an NGO or your own nonprofit, or be a youth worker. It can also be used with other age groups, not just youth. But it's sort of a guide that gives you some more insight into ethnographic theater and the power of the arts and social justice and human rights. And it's got some amazing activities. It's got a refugee simulation experience that I actually went through during my master's program that kind of shows you, kind of replicates the process that refugees go through, for those who maybe are, like, for students who are not that familiar with the plight of the refugees. So there's a great simulation experience in there. There's a great activity that kind of explains the process of ethnographic theater and taking a story from someone and bringing it to life. So if that's something that, if you have a group of students or people that you work with that you want to do something a little bit more interactive, we definitely recommend checking it out. It's a free download, so the link's in the chat. You can take a look and give it a try, and let us know how it works. I mean, we always like to know. We always love hearing from teachers who've tried it and who give us feedback, because it helps us know if it's working or not. So let us know. Take pictures. We'll post it on our social media. And honestly, I know we're in lockdown and quarantine, and theater sometimes is something to do in a physical space, but it's actually something you could do virtually. I mean, I still take acting classes. I still do my acting and improv classes every week, and we all do it through Zoom and or other like platforms, and it works really well. So if you have a group of youth or people who are maybe feeling stifled these days because they are missing out on opportunities, give it a try. Try doing the exercise via Zoom with whoever you'd like to, and I think it could still yield some amazing impact.
For sure. I guess maybe this is a good stopping point before we go into the final words from both you and Kevin. But just final question, and I think you've answered this with the things that you're doing right now. But please add on to it if there's anything that you wish to add. The question is from Bilal, and the question is: will either of you continue to do any work towards this Rohingya crisis?
Well, I think right now our other projects are unrelated to the Rohingya crisis, and we've kind of just been in the process of telling those stories and producing that. The Rohingya crisis is always something that, like I said before, we have such a strong tie to, and always checking the news to see the latest updates, and whenever we get the chance to talk, I also, there's a thing about like taking up space. Like in things like this, it's fine because we're talking about the film, but sometimes we get invited to talk just about the crisis, and I'm always happy to do that. But in those moments, I usually defer to the kids or to the community, because I think it's more important that they are in those spaces and in those rooms and are working towards solutions for the end of the Rohingya crisis. And that's something that has not always been the case. I mean, there have been a lot of times where governments have tried to repatriate Rohingyas back to Myanmar, and the Rohingyas have not signed off on it because they weren't at the table. They weren't involved in decision making. Nobody asked them. It's all these other stakeholders and politicians and government leaders who are making decisions for them. And for us, like we are strong allies of the Rohingya crisis, but because we actually know amazing activists who are doing such incredible work and have such incredible things to say, I usually, if we get an offer to do something or go to a meeting or talk, I always try to push the youth forward, because I think they are the leaders, they are the activists, and they are the ones who we follow when it comes to the crisis. So to answer your question, Bilal, it's something that we will always have on our radar, and will always be close to our hearts. And the film is a great opportunity to do that, because it opens up a lot of discussion and allows us to do things like this and raise money and engage with the crisis. And even though we're going on to work on other projects, it's something that, no matter what, even 10, 20 years from now, if people want to watch the film and do a Q&A and talk about it, I think we'll always show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's nothing more real and more real, I think, is the word, than getting it from the people of concern, right? Or at least having the people of concern in these conversations for a solution. So I 100% agree. Same with here at the UNHCR. I mean, we work in 130 countries, and for us at the fundraising side of things, there's nothing more important, or there's nothing more relevant than having the actual person of concern telling their stories. And it always works, and it's you get that you get the truthness out of it. So anyway, so I guess final words. I'll start with you, Yusuf. Final words before we sign off.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to UNHCR and Alex and Lynn and Valerie and everybody who came together and made this possible. You folks have always been so supportive, and even before we initially connected, the UNHCR has been an organization that we really respect and admire, and is a huge player on the ground when it comes to the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, in the camps. And we consider it a major player in the resolution of this crisis. So it's a real joy to be able to work with you, and thank you for making this happen. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Once again, we apologize for the technical difficulties with the film, I want to reiterate that the film is free to watch. In the chat, we'll also be tweeting and posting to promote that. You can use the promo code Stay Home on Vimeo on demand. The link is in the chat. Or if you go to our website that's there, you can click watch and just type in the promo code Stay Home and you'll get a free viewing. Please check out the rest of the film. And, if you want to watch it with friends and family, especially during the month of Ramadan, I mean, this is a month now where, we should be focused on the plight of others and how our Ramadan is different than others, how our fasting is different than others. And right now, the Rohingya refugees are experiencing very difficult times, and this is not an ordinary Ramadan for them. We're going through hardships because we're in lockdown, and isolation is very difficult, and that's real. But I think it's important to reflect on what we have and what other people are going through. And I think the film is a beautiful way of doing that because, as I mentioned in the beginning, you become a witness of genocide, and you're supporting this community both here in Canada and abroad, and validating their stories. There's such an effort to deny what's happening to the Rohingya people, but by watching this film and sharing it, you are reaffirming their existence and their stories. So please check out the rest of the film. Go to our website, IamRohingyafilm.com. Follow us on social media at I Am Rohingya. And one last little plug. Next week, we're doing a panel discussion with an organization called Never Again Coalition. That's a group against genocide. And we'll be doing a panel discussion with Kevin and I and Ruma, one of the cast members, and Siraz al-Islam, who's a Rohingya activist from the UK. So please tune in for more of a discussion on that. And thanks, everybody.
Great. I think Lynn is going to be sending that link and via email today. So watch out for that. Kevin, final words before we sign off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say. It's always I try to just add on to whatever Yusuf says. I'm the cinematographer; he's the director. But I think again, thank you for everyone for coming out, but also thank you for you, Alex, and UNHCR Canada for having us. It's always great to work with you guys, and we know the work you do goes a long way. Even in the making of this film, hearing the kids talk about your organization and the work that they saw being done over there was amazing. So again, if you can give anything, go to that link. Actually, I'll switch my name there. Go to that link right there and give what you can, because it goes a long way.
Thank you. Well, thanks again, Yusuf and Kevin. As usual, we are so grateful for you to sharing this film with us and for your time today. As Yusuf and Kevin mentioned, the Rohingya refugee crisis is far from over. More than 1 million Rohingya refugees have fled violence in Myanmar since 1990s. The humanitarian needs of Rohingya refugees remains immense, right? So a special thanks to all of you for making time to join us today. Our work in support of refugees wouldn't be possible without you. Your donations truly make a world of difference in the lives of refugees. You can continue to support our work during the holy month of Ramadan. We encourage you to visit www.unhcr.ca/imagine-Ramadan to learn how you can join us help 100 refugee families from this Ramadan to the next by supporting the UNHCR's cash assistance program. So we're wishing you continued safety and good health for you and your loved ones during this time. Enjoy the rest of your day and Ramadan Kareem to everybody. Thank you.
Ramadan Kareem.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Mass gang rapes, killings, including of babies and young children, brutal beatings, disappearances,
Mosques
and other
and Muslim
serious
shops
rights
were burnt by Buddhist monks.
More than 500,000 Rohingya Muslims have
The
now
Myanmar
fled across the
government does
border.
not recognize the Rohingya as a humanitarian group.
This could be a genocide. The Rohingya people.
Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me, please. Please don't kill me. Please don't. Don't kill me.
I want you guys to tell her to like shut up, stop kicking. Okay. Don't swear.
Can I go? Hey! Can I go like that?
But scare her. Okay. So why did you do the play?
Just to tell the Buddhists to not do this bad stuff to our country.
Had you ever acted before?
No, this is my first time acting.
The actor is drawing from their own stories, from their own history, from their own memories, from their own muscle memory, body memory.
I was thinking like, this is my chance to show the people that there's still Rohingya existing.
You have to make them live that story. Because every single audience that's watching the story, it's not just watching it. We're making them live that story.
I wasn't sure if the kids knew what they were getting themselves into.
Please let me, someone help me. Please help.
Let me go. Are you gonna send us back to death?
If we don't show about my country, how can the world know?
We have no discrimination to other religions. Don't believe it.
It had all the hallmarks of ethnic cleansing.
It was pretty harsh seeing your best friend die, and you can't get that out of your head even after many years.
I wanted them to join our play. Well, that could not happen because they're dead.
What you're about to see is the story of my people.
One by one, they try to erase Rohingya from existence.
I remember starting to lose hope that this show could actually happen. Okay, guys. Now it's just making people feel it. The sadness, the emotion, the horror, all of that stuff, just bring it out a little bit more.
It can change the future for a lot of people. It can change what they see in the future. They won't see blood, they will see the sunset.